Hello, I'm Plastic Kraken, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the new Combat Patrol magazine for Warhammer 40,000, just discussing some of the changes that they've made to the collection recently and the additional value that they've added by making those changes. And then I'll also be talking about just my thoughts, I suppose, on the collection overall and why you should or shouldn't consider picking it up. And then also just a few little thoughts on how I think Combat Patrol is comparing to Age of Sigmar's new Spearhead mode at the same time. So, without further ado, let's just crack into it. So, Combat Patrol magazine we know is launching in the UK on the 28th of August. So it's on a Wednesday, and so we know we're not far off from that now. And yeah, they have made some changes though in sort of the final hour. And so we're going to have a look at those now, and I can just show you some of the savings and changes that have been made. So first of all, we have the Commsar model. So this is £24 normally from Games Workshop, or $37 if you're in the US. And this has been replaced with the Heavy Weapon Squad. So this is a kit that would normally cost you £31.50 or $52 if you're in the States. So we're essentially getting £7.50 of additional value, or an extra $15 of value if you're in the US. So yeah, a nice little change there. I suppose a common theme with these changes that you'll see is they are swapping out character models with unit models. And so this is going to mean that overall we're going to end up with more models throughout the collection if you are picking up everything, and in particular these issues. And I think that's a good thing because it allows you to also more easily make use of multiple issues if you wish to. So you might not have, for example, that you might not really have a need in an army to pick up two or three of the same character, whereas two or three of the same unit is much more likely. Um, depending on which army you have, of course, and which detachments you're running, that sort of thing. But just generally, I think that is actually a better idea and something that more people can hopefully make use of. So as we move along then to the next change, we see that we have the Autarch. So this is currently £26 from Games Workshop, or $42 if you like being screwed over for prices in the US. Which I don't suppose anyone does, but they do like screwing you over, unfortunately. But just take solace in the fact that there are other places in the world that have it even worse than you. So yeah, they're going from $42 or £26 in the UK over to Wraith Guard, which are currently £40 from Games Workshop in the UK, or $62.50. So you're saving or additional value, I suppose, here. You're looking at £14 in the UK, or an extra $20.50 in the US. Finally, then we come to the final change that they've made, which is to the Master of Possession. So I imagine there will be some people who'll be sad to see this model go, as with the others, I'm sure as well. But this is one of my favourite models in the entire Chaos Space Marine range, or even the whole Warhammer 40,000 range in general. Actually, I just love this guy. But I do have him, so I'm not too broken up about this change personally. But I do hope that this wasn't a model that you were really looking forward to. Um, Now, some people expected this to be changed over with another unit. That's not actually the case. So they're actually going to do something completely different with this one and actually swap it out with a full Warhammer 40,000 codex, which is really interesting. It's a codex that hasn't been released before, brand new codex for an army that Games Workshop has been teasing for a long time. They've been getting the releases out there quietly, sort of under the radar, for quite some time now. And they're going to all come together under one book, and that book is Codex Tactical Rocks. Now, being a codex from Warhammer 40,000, this has infinite value. It's never going to go out of date. Points are not going to change. They're not going to FAQ this day one and just invalidate, what's in the expensive book you just bought, because why would they do a thing like that? This got all the big hitters in it as well, the sort of character units you would expect. excellent models. And the good thing about this is if you're an existing collector, you can go have a look at your collection right now, and you've probably got a 2,000 point army right there. And they also extend into any game system of Games Workshop, be it Kill Team, Age of Sigmar. You've probably got tactical rocks you can play from that game. But of course, back to the real world, and what they're actually replacing them with is some Chaos Space Marines. And not just any Chaos Space Marines, this is the Terminators. Some of my favorite models of all time. I fell in love with these guys back in like second edition. I've currently only got 5 though, I believe, and I will definitely be picking up more of these. This is what I'm talking about with the additional value of adding a unit over a character. Um, popping these guys in, I will probably pick up like 2 or 3 issues of this, because I really want much more Terminators in my army. And I think this is just excellent. So again, you're going from a £24 value here, or $37 value, up to a £40 value, or a $62.50 value. So an extra £16 of value for UK, extra 25 dollars and 50 cents, sorry, for the US. So overall, those changes that they've made mean we go from having 3 models up to 13 models, which is I suppose on the surface level of it, a good value. I do think the character models in general with Games Workshop are quite overpriced, and I'm sure not too many people would disagree on that. Um, there are some, there's obviously exceptions to rules. There's some incredible character models out there and that, but generally speaking, your sort of average sized hero model, they do charge you a lot for it compared to, for often a similar price, you can get a decent unit instead. Um, but there we are. So some excellent changes, I think, personally, and it's good to see even more value included in what is already uh, uh, a magazine series that's going to be uh, offering quite a lot of value, if you are interested in things that are in it. So I just want to talk about the collection as a whole, and my sort of current thoughts on it. So here we have the collection that you'd be getting if you got everything, and down the side here I've put the stuff that comes in the premium versions. And I just want to talk a little bit about this for anyone sort of not really aware or hasn't actually looked at the full contents and thought about this stuff. So for me personally, I will not be subscribing. And the reason for that is this is just a hell of a lot of models to add to my collection. And especially that it's a hell of a lot of models from all different armies. So there are, there's several armies in here that I collect, but there's a lot of models in here I've already got, and I don't necessarily need more of everything. Space is at a premium as for me personally, as much as like money is. And it's going to differ from person to person. No one should tell you what you should or shouldn't spend your money on. I think you can perhaps make recommendations. Um, but yeah, ultimately, whether this is a good value or not is going to come down to your personal preference. In pure monetary terms, yes, it's a good saving on if you bought all this stuff separately, from Games Workshop, for example, or from even a third-party retailer with a discount. The discounts do outweigh those. But I think anyone considering subscribing to this should at least look at this collection and genuinely think to themselves, do you want and need all these models? Um, are you realistically going to paint all of these models? I think, especially if you're a brand new player, like at least consider that these might not be as easy to all build and paint and everything as you might expect. Um, for example, you've got Chaos Space Marines in here. If you've never painted Chaos Space Marine trim before, newsflash, it's not the most fun thing in the world. Maybe you will find it fun. I don't hate it personally, but I know a lot of people do. But it isn't the easiest thing to have to do. It is quite a time sink. Um, so I think people just need to be realistic about what they're actually going to get out of this collection, whether they're really going to build and paint everything, whether you really need 9 combat patrols. Like, were you going to go out and buy 9 combat patrols plus additional models, plus even more models if you were going down the premium route? Were you going to buy all that already, or are you actually going to be spending a ton more money and ending up with a massive pile of magazines you can't even keep up with? That's just what I would say. Just to have a think about it, and just take it seriously, because this is, as I said, a lot of models. What I'm personally going to be doing, now I obviously have some armies already, so what I will be doing is just topping up armies or picking up bits that I need from this collection. So, for example, really need a Mauler Fiend. I'll definitely be picking him up. I'll pick up a Hellbrute because I don't have one of them. Parasite of Mortrex. I was lucky enough to win the World Eaters Combat Patrol when that first came out, so I would quite happily like to double up on that just to get my World Eaters force built out. But I mean, other than that, like, do I need all the Gene Stealer guys? Do I need to start collecting orcs? Do I need Eldari? Like, no, I don't need all this additional stuff. Like, I'll just pick up the things that are a good value to me, and then I'm making a much bigger saving because I'm only getting the stuff that I actually need. I'm not spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds on things that, yeah, I think are cool and I would love to paint, but that really I was never going to go out and buy in the first place. So that's my personal take on it. I'll just be sort of topping up my collection with things that I'm interested in, and perhaps picking up on multiple issues of some things like those Chaos Terminators that I mentioned. Um, I think another thing to consider as well, if you are brand new, you currently don't own any Warhammer models, and you're thinking about getting into Combat Patrol, and that's that Combat Patrol, the game mode specifically now I'm talking about, so not just the magazine, but that game mode. If you're interested in the Combat Patrol game mode, um, Combat Patrol is no longer the best Combat Patrol game mode. Okay, which might sound like a bit of a weird thing to say, but Age of Sigmar has just launched their new Spearhead mode. So Spearhead is like Age of Sigmar's Combat Patrol. You can buy Spearhead boxes or Vanguard boxes, which are the equivalent of a Games Workshop Warhammer 40,000, sorry, Combat Patrol. And this game mode, from everything that is out there, there's so many videos out there at the minute about this. It is a better game mode than Combat Patrol, just hands down. It is essentially what Combat Patrol should have been, and hopefully what Combat Patrol will be in the next edition of Warhammer. Hopefully they'll take what they've done with Spearhead and perhaps build upon it even further. Now, the reason I say it's better, there's a few things really. One, that you got these sort of game cards and mechanics that come into play that vary up the gameplay, so that even if you're playing with the same 2 armies again and again, you're going to have different things happen that are going to change that game mode up. It's faster. You've got yourself a game mode that hopefully they can support more going forwards as well, with perhaps like annual releases of like a new book. So for example, this one comes with a Fire and Jade book. That's like the initial setting of this Spearhead, and hopefully then, say in a year's time, we'll get an additional piece with like some additional cards and additional game board. And the game board, really comes into play into how you play the game as well. Like, different things can happen depending on where you are on the game board or which side of the game board you're using. And it's just a better, like more fleshed out version, I suppose, of Combat Patrol. And as well, the uh, the cards, like for the actual units, everything that you're using, are much more aligned with the main game of Age of Sigmar than what Combat Patrol uh, data sheets are to the main game. They've tried to keep everything much more in line with it, so you can more easily go from Spearhead into full Age of Sigmar than you would Combat Patrol into full 40k. So just something to think about. If you're not collecting anything, I would suggest that you at least, before you commit to a big subscription or anything like that, at least check out Spearhead and just see what you think of it. There are so many good Spearhead boxes. There's probably something you would be interested in here. There's also the Skaventide box has just been released, which has 2 spearheads included in it. So one for the Stormcast Eternals and one for the Skaven. So I would at least suggest that you consider that um, before you go down the combat patrol route. Obviously, if sci-fi is more your thing, have at it. Hopefully you enjoy combat patrol and then you enjoy moving on to for Warhammer 40,000. But yeah, just something I just wanted people to be aware of if you are brand new. Sometimes it takes someone who's already in the hobby to sort of point out things that you might not otherwise be aware of. And I just thought this is something that actually I think would be a better jumping on point for a lot of people, particularly if you're just picking up just your one box. Um, you're going to have a much easier time just picking up a one box and working your way through it than magazines that release weekly and you're just piling up and piling up and piling up. Um, and especially because with the magazine, you might only be interested in sort of like one or two of the combat patrols really, and the one you're looking forward to might not be out for a long time, like months. Whereas you could just pick up either just that combat patrol you want, or you could just pick up that spearhead box you want, and just get involved that way. So just something to think about. If you are looking forward to the magazine series, and you're going to be subscribing, absolutely great. I hope you enjoy it. There is still lots of values even outside of the model, obviously the paints, the brushes and things. So it's not without its merits by any means. And I do think that if you're getting it and you're enjoying it, great, great. But I'm just personally not going to be subscribing to it, and I'll just pick up what I need. Anyway, I hope that's been insightful for you. I hope it's been helpful. If you have liked this video, please do like, comment, and subscribe. Happy to have a little chat with you down in the comment section as well. And thank you so much for your time and take care. Bye bye.